Greeting, everyone. My name is William Porter. Welcome to this edition of Storytelling Time. This show is sponsored by Black Entrepreneurs Podcasting Network. And I'm so happy to have with us today Ms. Helen Moses. And she's a local business person here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And I'm very excited about our discussion. She was with us a few weeks ago at our Black Mastermind meeting. And we're going to get into some of that a little bit later. So glad you're with us today, Helen.
I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We're going to get started with your review, a brief review, I guess you would like, of your personal background, and then a little bit more about how you got into your business.
Okay, sure. My background is, first of all, my business has only been 8 years. This is the 9th year of my business. But before that, I had the opportunity to work as a speech language pathologist or a speech therapist in a variety of settings, including hospitals and home health and skilled nursing facilities and even an elementary school. So that field actually kind of set the stage for the work that I do in my business now as a voice and communication coach. Because it was when I was a speech therapist working with people who had lost their ability to speak and their language that I recognized how valuable a voice is, a person's voice, and that it's imperative that we do not take our voices for granted because they can be taken away very, very quickly.
Well, you mentioned losing your voice. I remember my daughter's an engineer, and I went to one of her meetings. And I wanted to converse with her colleagues, but on that particular evening, I guess it was about 1.5 years ago, before the pandemic. But anyway, I lost my voice and I could not speak. And I don't know whether it was laryngitis or what. So I guess the question is, apparently you help people with those kinds of problems as well, as far as not being able to speak at all. Is that correct?
Well, I used to, as a speech therapist and a voice therapist in a clinical setting, that would have been one of the things I would have worked with people. But now I help people who've lost their voice in a more metaphorical situation, people who have lost their confidence or for whatever reason are choosing not to speak up because they don't feel like it's worth the effort.
Well, you mentioned at the mastermind meeting a few weeks ago how you got started and how influential poet Maya Angelou was and continues to be as far as your business and what you do. And let me know, what is the connection between her history as far as speech is concerned and how you got into the speech pathologist area?
Her story is really fascinating. I don't know how many, if you or many of your viewers know, but when she was 8, her mother's boyfriend raped her. And she identified him, she said, who had done the rape. And shortly after that, he was found beaten to death. And Maya decided that her voice had killed that man. And so she decided she was not going to speak again. And she didn't speak for 5 years. It wasn't until an English teacher of hers took an interest in her, and Maya was an avid reader. The English teacher knew that, and she said, "That's good." And she said something, the teacher said something like this to Maya, you know, words are good, but it takes the human voice to infuse meaning into those words. And Maya began to talk again through reading poetry because she was so drawn to it. And I just think it's another story where we see, you know, how we're not to take our voices for granted. And if you look at the work of this woman in her lifetime, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about the contributions that she made, the power of her words and the power of her voice. Oh my goodness, to hear her read and to read her writings, to hear her voice, just it moves me, and I know it moves other people. So if she had kept quiet, what a loss that would have been to all of us.
Well, she certainly was a legend, and it was unique as far as the reason why she didn't speak or couldn't speak. But one reason a lot of people don't like to get up in public and speak is because of nervousness. And I think this question was raised in the mastermind meeting you attended a few weeks ago.
Right.
So exactly how can we deal effectively with nervousness as far as getting up and speaking in public?
Well, there are a lot of things we can do. There's some things that might even require some kind of psychological intervention if the fear is that bad. But aside from that, practicing, rehearsing, knowing what it is you want to say, understanding your audience as best as you can so you can connect with them when you speak is really good. And just breathing, taking time to breathe and repeat some affirmations or maybe some scripture that calms you down, that affirms and assures you of the value that you bring through your voice. Those kinds of things can help reduce nervousness.
And I think we talked about this before. One sure way of dealing with nervousness is to be confident in what you are doing and what you are speaking about, which requires preparation, I think you mentioned. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, confidence. The confidence is the other thing that calms the nerves, which comes from the practice for one thing, but also the confidence in just understanding you've got important, valuable, meaningful information to contribute to the audience. Confidence, having that confidence does calm the nerves, but it also it helps courage to rise up in us, courage to speak the truth, courage to be vulnerable, to even let it be okay to make a mistake. That can really help a person who's afraid of public speaking, is it's okay to make mistakes. I even attended a Toastmasters International Conference one year, and the keynote speaker, one of the most well-known Toastmasters in the world, lost his train of thought in the middle of his keynote speech. And I tell you, that was actually one of the best things I ever saw, because I was like, well, okay, if he can do it and recover, it's fine. And what I felt as the audience member, which I think is often true, is that I was cheering him on. I was willing to wait for him to find his train of thought again. So if you have the confidence that you know what you're going to say, even if you have that momentary lapse of memory, you're going to get through it. And the trust that people want you and want to support you through it as well.
I mentioned the fact that I did get your book, and we're going to talk about that more in the detail a little bit later. But one of the things that you mentioned near the beginning of the book, and it relates to confidence, and the way you put it in the book was self-confidence, and that is value. That is value in yourself. So explain that to our viewers.
Yeah. I went on a journey to try to find my voice late in my life, because even though I was a voice coach and had been a speech therapist, I got to understand that I really hadn't found my voice. And I understood eventually the reason why. And that was because I didn't place value on myself. I didn't believe that I was worthy. I didn't believe that that I mattered in some cases. Even though I could perform and pretend to be confident, underneath I really wasn't feeling that way. And it had to come down to a decision to own my value, to believe it. And that, for me, it was because of my faith I was able to do that, because we are children of God, created in God's image. each one of us is valuable just because we exist, just because God created us, and there's nothing we can do to change that. So doing some wrestling with that and coming to terms with that made me understand that my value had been there all along. I just wasn't willing to embrace it. And that's one thing I now get to work on with my clients because it's so important. I get to help people understand their value and why it's important and how it helps their confidence and helps them influence and make a bigger impact on more people.
And I think what you're saying is that that value you're talking about comes from within. And I say that because it's so easy for many of us to get our value from other people, especially if we listen closely to some people, because some people are not very nice as far as trying to encourage us. Unfortunately, I believe most people are supportive, but occasionally you do have times when people are rather discouraging in one way or another.
Yes.
So address that just for a second.
Yes. Well, that can, people can just interject their thoughts on us and their opinions and their should statements, like you should do this, you should do that. And we can make up in our minds that what they're saying. You know, we can make something up and believe that they're saying that to us when they really aren't. So part of that is recognizing that what they say, whether it's real or not, is from them. And I guess I'm going to back up a little bit and tell you that in my journey, all my life, I had been looking externally for people to validate my value, especially people in authority, parents, teachers, Sunday school teachers. And I wanted to do right. And I wanted to say and do the right thing, whatever the right thing they thought it should be. And the freedom of recognizing that most of what I thought they thought was actually made up in my head, gave me the freedom to just say, well, I don't have to live up to other people's expectations because my value is here. But so many of us do that. We look to other people to confirm that we're valuable. And we put lots of mothers in particular put themselves second so that they can serve everybody else and they forget to take care of themselves. And then ultimately they feel not valuable because they don't have anything left. You know, they just, it's good when we can get it from an internal source and from a faith kind of source. And when we can recognize that it doesn't matter what other people say, we don't have to live up to their expectations to find our value.
Well, you know, that's especially the case when most of the time we can't even identify who the they are. We always say that they say this and they say that, but for the most part, we can't identify with who the they are.
That's true. I challenge people when they say, well, they say I can't do it. I said, who's they? When did they say it? What exactly did they say? Did they write it down or actually say it to you? And most of the time, the answer to all of those questions is, well, I don't know, or no, I guess I just made that up.
Yeah. Well, Helen, we're going to go ahead and take our first break, and we're going to come back in just a minute. So stay with us.
All right.
We're with Helen Moses, speech pathologist here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. I'm very glad that she's with us. And I have another question for you, and that is, in addition to confidence, we talked about value, and I have another word that's very important, and it's very seldom when you have these kinds of discussions that this particular word does not come up, and that is purpose. So what is the significance of purpose as far as being able to speak well in public?
Well, let me start with this old riddle. If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make any noise? You've heard that, right?
I've heard that.
The question is yes. I mean, the answer is yes. It does make noise. The real question is, does it matter if it makes noise if no one is there to hear it? So if we speak without purpose, we're rattling on, we're using filler words, phrases, stream of consciousness that's not focused, and people will start to tune us out if we don't have purpose when we speak. It's like we're going to be like the tree falling in the woods, making a lot of noise, but no one's going to care, or no one's going to have hung around to listen. So to speak with purpose means setting an intention, thinking about why you're saying what you're saying, not just what you want to say, but why? Why am I speaking here? Why am I doing this? What is it that I want to happen as a result of my words? And if you stop to take a moment to think about that purpose, you're going to stay much more focused on that purpose in your conversation. The purpose helps drive the conversation in a nice and a positive direction. And it helps everyone keep on track. And if you're in a meeting, for example, having purpose for your speaking is incredibly important for keeping that meeting running on time.
You know, I have a saying that to be successful,